Hello, hello, hello to all of us out there. My name is Chad Perry, and I am on with Joshua Plansky. And tonight's webinar, or this evening's webinar, we're going to talk about protocols for the modern dental team. And basically, when we talk about protocols for the modern dental team, what we are looking to go ahead and discuss is basically communication within the dental office to the laboratory, and how those two modalities intermingle to create the best results for our patients. And so we're going to go over some protocols that Josh and I use for modern day dentistry, going from not old school, but some analog to digital aspects as well. So just a little bit about myself. My name's Chad Perry. I have a small office here in Fort Worth, Texas. I've been working with Josh for, Josh, probably about, 7 years or so, somewhere along those lines. We've lectured together quite a bit. And basically what Josh is showing right now, going through these slides, is some of the restorations that I've done. I like to do composites in my practice. I have quite a high-end aesthetic practice, but it's a general practice nonetheless. And so I really kind of focus on composites. And then when I met Josh, I ended up focusing more on the ceramic-based systems now and creating lifelike restorations in my practice. Hence, like this one, this is basically a step forward, straight protocol going from your restoration to the prep to etch to bond, and then building up one cusp at a time in composite. Okay. And so that is my goal in composite as well, as such as this one, same type of thing, hypocalcification, then go with composite, and we're able to create not lifelike restorations. So I wanted to transition that into my ceramic, and that's how I found Josh. And we've been working together for quite some time.
So, hey, everyone who's listening, that was Dr. Chad's introduction. I guess I'll show you guys a little bit about what I do, what Chad was saying about the ceramic end. So first and foremost, I'm not alone. I have a great team of about 6 technicians that work with us at Niche Dental Studio in Voorhees, New Jersey, and my wife. And we've really also, like Chad was saying, we've really tried to be a little forward thinking moving into the future of dentistry. I was trained very old school, and I guess when Chad was saying trying to create lifelike restorations, composite is amazing. And I would say Chad and a lot of the doctors we work with are real masters with composite. But from the laboratory end, I think there's some limitations, I would say, or let's say long-term limitations that we can achieve with ceramics, like Chad was saying. What we also do in the lab is we also work with a large group of dentists, and we work with a lot of prosthodontists. So we're not just focusing just on aesthetics or ceramics, but we're doing very large cases. This is a technician I have, Lilybeth, who whacks this up. We're doing a lot of planning. And I'm not sure what Chad's going to focus on a lot in this presentation. To be totally honest with you, it's going to come across good, so I'm not scared to say this, but Chad and I really just looked over this together like 10 minutes ago. So I'm not sure what Chad's going to focus on, but I would really like to hammer home a lot on the word planning. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but for instance, here's a case I did this year with Kenny Malamut. These are temporaries on a full mouth. With these temporaries, we could then go to the computer or the new technology, scan everything, angle correct everything. We can then create a case like this. I could send it to Boston, being very, very confident. So we're doing a lot of cases like this today, hybrids in our lab. And yeah, so cases like that, you don't want room for error. Full mouths like this, when my laboratory sends us back to the doctor, we don't want any surprises coming up. So we really, really try to focus on planning and communication. For all of you guys who are listening, we're going to go through everything from a single central all the way to like a mid-type case or a mid-level case, and then a full mouth. And we would like to show you how we get these results. For instance, to get a single central veneer that looks like this, I was going to say there's no secret, but there is some secrets, and we'll go over them when we get to the section on single centrals. But a lot of this has to do with communication that Chad gives my laboratory and my technicians. For instance, we were very used to, for a long time, only focusing on the mouth, but Chad gives me a lot of access to his patients. And I would also like to talk a lot about this. Chad's going to talk about this as well. We really don't believe in just doing cherry-picked cases or showcases or presentation cases. This is our everyday work. This is a Dr. Charlie Ward I work with in Maryland, who Chad's very friendly with. But these are just monolithic restorations. And I just really want to emphasize that with the right communication and the right pictures, we can have fantastic results like this on, I guess, what you would consider your bread and butter or everyday work. I believe the work is so good that Chad actually sent this case back to me 5 or 6 years after he cemented it, asking for money back. He was trying to return the crown. But this is a cemented Lissy press case that we did probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I can still see after 5 to 6 years with properly managed occlusion and proper techniques in the laboratory, it looks the same as it did when it left the door 5 or 6 years ago. So these are things that we're doing in our laboratory. Moving a little more to the cutting edge, we've really implemented a lot of CAD/CAM like that. That's Sergio did this. He's a technician in my lab. This is, again, an everyday case where we can get a model, scan it, design it, layer it, and have very predictable results with CAD/CAM. We're also utilizing CAD/CAM a lot more to do a lot of the legwork up front. It's the same for the doctors listening. You know, instead of taking impressions, the scanner can do a lot more legwork for you. It's the same with our milling machines. We can really focus a lot of our energy onto the back end or the creative process, where a lot of the upfront work can be done with machines. Now, machines aren't the answer. You still have to have a very talented person working the machine. It's just a tool. But for instance, we're now doing totally digital iOS cases where we'll get 28 preparations sent over. To the left, you're looking at that. And then to the right is 28 milled PMMA temporaries scanned in the mouth. So this is an ongoing case as well that we're working on right now, fully iOS and fully digital. Digital in our laboratory today also allows us to do many things that we couldn't do by hand. For instance, we can now, on large cases like that, print eggshells with palatal and vestibule retromolar pad rests. So on a full mouth, if we're raising vertical, there's really only one way to reline the temporary. Whereas before with my hands, a lot of doctors were relining, but they would throw the cant off, they wouldn't reline it correctly. But with technology today, we have the capability of utilizing biology to make our work perfect. Another thing about our lab and what Chad does, I mean, Chad has patients come here to New Jersey. You'll meet a couple of them in this presentation. This is a doctor I work with in Chicago, Izzy. And for years, this is a case that we were doing with him when he flew out pre-COVID, right in February. And working with patients is always the best for me as a lab technician. However, what we're trying to do a lot more today is use 3D technologies to create virtual patients. About 80 to 90% of our clients are out of state. And of course, not everyone's gonna fly in. So we're utilizing a lot of technology today to create a 3-dimensional patient. We only have an hour to speak tonight, so I can't show you everything, but being able to stitch together the DICOMs, the CBCT, the face, the model, I mean, we can really create a biologic 3-dimensional patient in order to communicate with our doctors. So that's a little bit about myself and my laboratory and the work we do. And now I would like to kind of get into the work. So
hey, Josh, let me interrupt.
Sure.
One housekeeping tip. If any of you all have any questions, please feel free to jot them in. They pop up on my screen and we can basically answer questions as we go. So if you have any questions about any of this, please let us know and we'll answer them right away.
Or we'll try to.
Or try to.
Because we only have an hour. And Chad and I, like you said, after 7 years of working together, we can go for 4 hours. So we really tried to pack this in. But before we get into the meat or the bulk of our presentation, I would like to speak for myself and Chad on thanking GC. I've had the privilege of working with GC for almost a decade now, and they've really supported my vision as a lab technician for over 10 years. And in turn, I would like to thank them and share with you guys a little bit of the R&D that I did for Lissy Press. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar, Lissy Press is a lithium disilicate. I guess its natural competitor, or what you've heard of, is going to be Emax. I was involved, there was a little small group of technicians that were involved in America and in Europe in the research and development, and I was very lucky and fortunate to be involved in this. So all the data, I would say, you can find about LisiPress on the website. What's going on here? Your screen is sharing. Oh, there you go. You can find all that data on the website, but I showed this back in 2015 in the launch when I lectured in Chicago, and I would like to revisit it again. Because for all of you who are on here watching, you're bombarded in the magazines all the time with strength, with megapascals, with this is the best product, but I don't think you see so much other than that. And I was going very deep with the material, and as a dental technician who's heavily into ceramics, his career, I've always studied nature. So on the bottom portion of my screen is 6 anteriors that I photographed with a photoelastic technique where I grind out all the dentin and I cross-polarize the enamel to observe the photoelastic phenomenon or light scattering on the enamel. Up until this point, we've tried to cross-section many materials to replicate this light output because dealing with metamerism is our #1 enemy from lab to the mouth. And we've never had a material that quite replicated nature. If you look up top, that is LisiPress. So that's 6 veneers on the top section. And that's the first material that I've come across that closely replicates the light scattering effects of natural enamel. So that was one interesting phenomenon to me. So I kept studying it even more. So again, if you look to the left, those are natural teeth cross-sectioned and polarized. And to the right is a piece of LisiPress. So you can see very similar opalescent effects and very similar light scattering effects. To take it even further in my research on this material, to the right is natural dentin. So the tooth that's underneath the word nature, that's the full tooth with the enamel. So obviously you see more fluorescence at the cervical because that's where there's more dentin buildup. To the right of that is the same tooth demineralized. So I soaked that tooth in hydrochloric acid and stripped away the enamel so you can only see the dentin, which is extremely fluorescent. To the left, where it says Lisi, that is the fluorescence level of a LisiPress crown. So it is also a very highly fluorescent material. Really quick, to the left is a natural tooth demineralized. Again, to take this study further, I then poured that tooth in wax and replicated the natural tooth in wax. So in the middle, you have a full tooth in wax. And then you have the dentin structure in wax, and I went ahead and pressed them. So to the right is LisiPress. I guess I'm psychotic. I then took it even further. I waxed a crown on top of the dentin, and I pressed that in enamel from LisiPress, and I bonded the two together, and I created my own tooth. I guess histoanatomically correct tooth with LisiPress. I cross-sectioned it to the left, and now you can see the same dentin makeup of a natural tooth and the same opalescence and enamel of a natural tooth. So to the right is a natural tooth, and to the left is LisiPress. And I was quite surprised at what I was getting. So how am I using this? I'm still observing the rules of nature. So to the left is natural teeth, and all the way to the right is those same teeth demineralized. So I'm just doing the same with my lithium disilicate. I'm pressing it full contour, or I'm pressing it in a dentin cutback, and then I'm just cutting it back so I have a dentin makeup. So here's a little schematic of it. You have your cutback, your wash and internal effects bake, your first bake, then your texture stain and glaze bake. So we're getting phenomenal results with this material. To the left is LisiPress, to the right is Emax. There it is, also under polarized light. We have a little more translucency, I've noticed with LisiPress. That's not necessarily a good or bad thing, it's just what I observed. And up until this day, we've just been having phenomenal results with this material. So before we get into it, I just wanted to thank GC, and this was the first ad they ran. This is a case I did probably, I don't know, a long time ago. But that was the ad that they ran for the material. And it's a wonderful material, really encapsulating the natural effects of teeth. And I don't think that usually comes across in the magazines. You can go ahead, Chad.
Sure. Wonderful, wonderful work. To get into this, what Josh had started off with was he really wants to focus on the planning. And that's what we're really here to talk about, because it all starts at the beginning. this is a preparation that I did not too long ago. Everything starts at the beginning. The planning, basically, when you see a tooth that you're going to prep, plan for what you're wanting to do. Josh, if you'll go back just a little bit, one slide back. And so in the planning phase, basically, before you cut the tooth, you look at the prep design. What am I going to do? In this case, I'm going to do a Lissi press, a lithium disilicate. Josh is going to make me more than likely a monolithic pressable ceramic on this. My goal is to give him exactly what he needs, so there's no question that he can do his best work. If you look at this, the prep design's perfect. The cleanliness, I've actually sandblasted this with an AquaCare unit, and then communicated Josh with photographs of the initial presentation, the prep, and then the shade. And so he gets something like this, looks at it, he says, perfect, easy, slam dunk, and we get a final product. And that's the way we work with single units all the way up to full mouth restorations. So you can skip, yeah. This is an onlay, basically right here. That was the temporary. That was the preparation that I did under rubber dam isolation. That is the onlay that is not cemented. And then the next slide is the onlay that is cemented. Now, let me talk a little bit about cementation of Lissi press. These lithium disilicates can either be cemented with glass ionomer cements or with resin cements. To me, if you're going to do an onlay, it's preferable to use a resin cement, definitely, just because of the fact with the way that you prepare the material, you can cement these with almost no indication of any type of margin, similar to what you're seeing right now. And those cements, such as self-adhesive cement, would be something like a GSIM Link Ace. And if you do this under isolation and you're clean, then you will have a wonderful cementation protocol moving forward with minimal chances of recurrent decay underneath these.
And if I could interrupt real quick, what Chad just showed is very important to me as a lab owner, because really all I can do is give back what is given to me. So you've heard the expression garbage in, garbage out. It's a term that we throw around in the laboratory, because really, if I don't have what Chad just showed, it's very difficult for me to give back a solid restoration. And the thing is, there's a really good saying that I love, and it's how you do one thing is how you do everything. So when I see a doctor send me cases like this, it's then my responsibility and my laboratory's responsibility to give him back a unit that fits like a glove. So everything on our side is also done under Leica magnification. So it's just a step-by-step process that really allows it to flow a lot better.
Yeah, and this is Lissi press as well, but it's a monolithic stain and glaze. So for those of you who are working with the lab, if you do a monolithic crown, don't be under the impression that you cannot get it to look far near perfect. So that second premolar right there is one that I basically seeded last week and gave this to Josh. And question, is Lissi a resin material? No, it's not. It's a lithium disilicate material. It's in the category of a glass ceramic. So Josh, I don't know if you want to talk about the stain and glaze on that.
It's a little bright. I mean, it's good, but for stain and glaze, I'm good with it. But as you'll see from this presentation, we are our own worst enemies, which is a good thing, but it becomes a double-edged sword, because everyone listening, it took me a while to realize this. What we do is very creative and it's very artistic, but at the same time, it is a business, and your time is valuable. Our time is valuable. So we have to learn how to not kill ourselves. So for instance, Chad just talked about that single unit. So this is also a monolithic lateral with pink composite that Chad and I did. And on another presentation, maybe we can go through this whole case. We took it out because it's a very complex case. But obviously, what you can see from this picture is not just a pretty before and after picture. For the dentists who are looking at this, right away you're seeing a lot of planning went into this before Chad sent this to me. I saw this case from the beginning on the left, and I saw it all the way through until the end on the right. and we can only get these results with fine communication. So I made the lateral on the after. I prepared everything. This is an old technique. It's an old case that Christian Coachman was doing. So it's a lithium disilicate lateral, a pink composite. I prepared the cervical edge of the lateral before I sent it back to Chad. And then Chad just used Gradia pink composite to really fine tune it in the mouth. And this is the way that we get these exceptional results. So Chad, do you want to, or no, I can go over this. So this is just a disclaimer because we're now going to get into the meat of our presentation. We'll just get into Michael. I show this case because this case, we have a lot of documentation, Chad and I. We document a ton of cases, but after about year 5 or year 6, I don't want to say the honeymoon ended, but we just started working. You know, Chad sends me work, boom, I take it and I do it. But I would like to at least show with this case, because this is a case from not too long ago, on the bare minimum we would need, because there's some people who try to work with us and they don't give us enough information. So before we get into all the bells and whistles and all the great stuff we need, I just want to show you the bare minimum that we would need as a laboratory to create a nice restoration. So obviously I would like pre-op photos. I would like shade selection photos. Believe it or not, we have people who still don't want to give them. I just don't understand it, but it's okay. I like polarized image to the right, and I like a non-polarized image to the left. And I would like abutment color images. This is very important with pressable ceramics or any kind of translucent ceramic. We would need to know if we need to block something out, we need to know thickness, we need to know all of this information. And I would also like to see pictures of the temporaries and a model of the temporaries. With that, we can then go ahead and create, this is pressed units. Just with that basic information, we can create a case like this, but anything less than that is where I've noticed after doing this for close to 17 years, we start entering a troubled territory where there's guesses or questions. But with that little information, we can have pretty good outcomes. So again, just a revision, bare minimum, pre-op photo, abutment color, abutment photo, shade photo, and a model of the temporaries, and we can give you a very good result. That is, for me, the bare minimum. Chad, do you want to touch into this right here?
I think that this is pretty self-explanatory if you go through this, but you know, Josh and I have communicated, and it's really funny because, and you can just run through these and we can read them, but it's really interesting because now we've gotten to a point where Josh and I talk so much that it's almost a given on, we basically understand each other. So even on some lab prescriptions, I don't have to go in as much detail as I used to. But really the communication is key. And also the other thing is when you're doing those anteriors, the face, the actual photograph of the face really dictates the shape of the teeth. And so that's key for Josh.
Yeah, I mean, these are very basic, but I would like to re-emphasize them because again, after 17 years of doing this, we once in a while get someone who slips through the cracks who just doesn't want to follow these. And I will use the word rules. I mean, there's rules in life. I mean, like rules, there are rules. So if we have a client who wants to send us work, but they don't communicate, they don't answer phone calls, they send a case with no lab script, it's just not going to work. It just will not work. So these rules are very important. It took me a long time to find my legs in this field and to find my voice. And after many years of frustrating work, we just realized that without these basic things, it just won't work. And I don't know if it's on here, but I can say the number one rule for me at 41 years old is just be nice. If you're a dentist and you want to work with a good lab and you're nice, we'll bend over backwards for you. But yeah, if it's going to go, and it's the same, you know, I mean, I guess, Chad, you want only nice patients, and you guys can't choose that, but the labs can. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing on this, there are two takeaways from this. One, I will tell you that if you Skype with your patients or FaceTime with your patients with the lab, that is a huge, huge practice builder because it really creates that trust with the patient. The other one that Josh and I always have is a no-fault policy. If something goes wrong, I always think that it's my fault, and he always says, well, what did we do differently? And so that no-fault policy is key.
This is a very important one, I would say, because I do have doctors who call me and they just go down a rabbit hole of why this happened, why this happened, why this. I'm like, because it's dentistry and it happens, And I think with the no fault policy, it's very good because what we're looking for the most part, is just statistics. Meaning, like, if Chad and I do 10 crowns and one crown has an open contact or one crown slightly shades off, for me, we're doing good. I mean, we're really rolling along here, because the problem is if I start going down this rabbit hole with Chad and chasing that one case, I may change things and then having 1 out of 10 cases go wrong. Now all of a sudden we're at 7 out of 10 going wrong because now I'm chasing things. So I believe in statistics. If every case you do with your laboratory comes back wrong, it's time for both people to move on. But if something happens once in a while, I would really chalk that up to, hey, we're in dentistry. Welcome to dentistry.
So this was a case of a woman who came into me and, single centrals are really, really difficult. But with the correct photographs and in communication, we can achieve great results. I always set the expectations of my patients that there will be multiple attempts at a single central. We probably will not get it in one shot. So Josh, if you want to go through these attempts and pick apart what you liked, what you didn't like.
Yeah, correct. And this really falls into the no fault policy, because you all listening, I'm sure you have the experience. A single central is a very difficult way of working. And here is the first attempt that I made on this case. And I would say, again, that Chad and I are, I don't want to say, we're our own worst enemies. So it all depends. I have many clients, and for some, this would be like, hey, Josh, you nailed it. For others, you'd say, hey, man, it's too opaque, it's off. And I'm just here to listen. I don't really voice my opinion. I just look at it and I bite my tongue, because for me, I look at that and I say, oh, God, But that's first attempt. Chad is very respectful and says, do you think you can make it better? I said, send it back. Just send it back. Because sometimes we get a little ahead of ourselves and we say, it's very easy. So that was the first attempt. Then came the second attempt, and we took it under polarized lighting. I went a little too heavy with the blue on the incised ledge. You could probably see that. I didn't really capture the orange effects on it. And the value was okay and opacity was okay. She didn't like the yellow stain at the top, so I took that off. But I wasn't happy with the shape on this.
And let me step back on that. Really, the first thing that I look for versus color or anything is really the shape of the tooth, because the shape to me really, really defines what the aesthetics of the actual tooth is. And Josh, I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's to me the deciding factor.
Well, so Michel Monnier is one of my all-time favorite people in this field. I would consider him a mentor, and he's very famous for in his lectures just saying everything's about 3 things: form, form, form. And for me, when I look at this, I totally missed the form, and it's really on that cervical third and like the bulbous distal line angle. And so if you nail the form, but the color's a little off, like if I crushed the form on this and it was exact replica, I would say it's probably okay. But I missed the effects, and I missed the form, and I missed a lot. So that was attempt 2. So now we're at attempt 3. And if you see that, we start getting pretty critical. We bust out the rulers. We start looking at the overlap. I overlap too much. And you can understand that we're really just going down a rabbit hole. And at that point, I would say, and this is of no fault of my own, but once something goes back 3 times, it starts getting bad. Here it is. We finally got it. We finally nailed it, and everyone is very happy. But Chad and I showed this slide because these are the old days. These days, it's been a while since we've had these problems, because we'll talk about ELAB, that we're going to go into this topic right now. So we got that, and I think it's unfair, or I think it's unjust for me to show this on social media or on Facebook or on Instagram or my website and just show this after and say, oh, look how good I am. I think it's very fair to show you, hey, look, it's a very good result, but it took us 4 times to get there. And this is very frustrating. Even though everyone's nice involved, it is very frustrating for everyone. She was a great patient. What was her name again? Or it doesn't matter. I shouldn't even be saying that. But what was her name? I forgot her name.
Oh my God.
Donna. Whatever. She was very nice. I Skyped with her every time. She was very pleasant. She was very patient. And with that, like I said, we can get those nice results. But matching color can get tricky. And that's not just for a single central, but that's even for lower incisors. So how did Chad and how did we get away from this way of shade taking? Because Chad's in Texas and I'm in New Jersey, to try to go in a different direction, to try to eliminate all those missed appointments and missed chair time, to really like hammer down the shade matching issue. Chad, I don't know if you want to explain the eLab portion and then I'll explain the cases, but we're using a system called eLab now, and it's a calibrated way of working where we can measure the color, use those measurements to actually make the recipe of ceramic so we can have better results and actually digitally try the cases in here in New Jersey before they go back to Texas. So Chad, if you just want to explain eLab and the tools they'll need and everything about it, and then I'll take over with the cases.
Yeah, so this was obviously developed by these bioemulation guys. Sasha Hein was really the forefront of this. And basically, what it is Josh nailed it. It's basically a mathematical formula in order to create lifelike restorations. So here are the tools that you'll need. One, you need to figure out if your lab does this. And if they don't, you can get them on board. But basically, you need a good camera, a good single lens reflex camera. Doesn't matter which kind, but you just need a good one with a dual flash. You also need Lightroom.
Well, not anymore, but
yeah, you're right, not anymore.
But we're going to show it to you from infancy when it first was developed all the way till now. But you used to need Lightroom. You don't anymore.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of initial stuff that the dentist had to do. Mm-hmm. But you need the camera. You'll need this gray reference card, okay? And then generally, it's not required, but this axis bracket. And basically, it distributes the light to where it's very consistent on both angles to shoot back to the lens, and it just picks up all of it. It minimizes the reflections, plus it ends up evening out the lighting. The other thing is you'll need a polarized filter for your camera, and the polarized basically eliminates the specular reflections. And so that can obscure these fine details if you have too much in the way of glare and flash. And so what you do is you put this card up almost 90 degrees to the tooth, okay, in the mouth, and then you take a picture, a photograph. It's specified at a specified f-stop, ISO. There's a whole recipe for this. And so anyway, so we apply this, and then Josh can actually look at this photo and apply math to it, basically, to go ahead and mix his ceramics in order to achieve a darn near perfect result. And our goal is to get this right the first time.
That's our goal, but it's just a tool, eLab. I don't want people to see this and think that it's the miracle, like the magic pill, but it is an amazing tool. So I'll explain to you with some cases if you didn't understand I guess everything about it. Maybe with this visual inventory of cases, you'll understand the concept a little more. So I will take a photo of the tooth with the eLab card. And what I do is I use a Mac computer. So every Mac has something, and this is the infancy. We don't have to do this anymore, but I want to show you how it first started and then how it kept developing into an app, and now it finally developed into an actual software called Prime. But this is how we originally did it. So on my computer, I have something called a digital color meter. If you have a Mac and you go into your Finder and type, or your search bar and type in digital color meter, this little box will come up that says digital color meter. I switch the display from RGB to LAB. And what LAB is, L is going to be your value, A and B is going to be your yellow and red, which will be your chroma. So you're measuring the LAB value, if that makes sense, everyone. So you'll hover over the tooth. So I'm not using a shade guide. I'm actually getting the LAB values of the actual tooth we're going to make. In the infancy part of eLab, there was a chart that Sasha and his team made with LAB values and corresponding shades. So you can see right there, it's starting at bleach all the way to C4, and then to the right is the LAB values. And I would find the closest porcelain and I would layer it. What I then do what I would then do is take a picture of my crown on the model, calibrate it the same I did as the one in the mouth, and I would cut it out and try it in the mouth. So that was the first time that I could actually start doing digital try-ins, which for me is really the most important part of this system. For me, since 80 to 90% of my clients are out of state, some even out of country, being able to try in a crown before I send it back is amazing. What's also amazing is Chad used a very important word earlier of analytic. Before eLab, it was very artsy. I'd have dentists send cases back and say, a little too yellow, too high value, put more white. These terms are all very in the air for me. It's like a little yellow to one person could be very different than a little yellow to another person. What we can do now is I can measure the LAB values of my crown tried in the mouth with the LAB values of the actual crown and compare the two to analytically find out how much more yellow or red or value I need. I can then try it in the mouth, like I said, digitally. Compare the two in the mouth right there. And what I can do is I can use an app called the Delta E calculator, and I can calculate the two, crown to tooth, and come up with my Delta E, which would be the average of the two, to see if I have a successful restoration. So there's my restoration on number 8 in the mouth. That was under polarized light. Here is the restoration with a dual point flash, because we don't walk around looking with polarized light. We also want to see what it looks like with in natural light. And that is the concept of eLab. So that was a pretty monochromatic tooth. Sometimes we have pretty crazy colored teeth. So I would take 3 color readings: cervical, middle third, and incisal. I would take those color readings. Again, this is the infancy. We don't do this anymore. But I would go to my chart and I would find the color I need. It's kind of like in Home Depot, when you have a custom color made. If you ever see how they do that, everything starts with a can of white paint, and then you see all the colors go in. That's the same concept I'm doing here. I'm starting with a white core, and I just paint the colors on and measure them until I get the correct LAB value of the actual tooth I measured, not the shade tab that was requested or picked. So here is that crown in the mouth. Again, analytically measuring the difference between the two. And there it is in final. That's a Lissy crown on number 8. So that was used with no shade guide. And this is just the workflow right here, just to show again. That's another long distance client of mine. And that's how it used to be. After that, it went up to an app. It was called eLab Prime, I believe. What I would need was a calibrated picture like the one on the right, and I would need an abutment color like the picture on the left. What I would do is I would put it into eLab's app. They had an app on the computer. I would hover over the crown I wanted to measure, and I would lock it. And then if you look at this little box here that says eLab, I would select GC, initial Lissy, and then it would actually tell me the ceramic to use. So I would need 6 scoops of E17, because eLab is actually a system that comes with 3 portioners, scoops. So it has a Denton scoop, it has a 5 scoop, and a 1 scoop. So where it says 6 scoops, I take 1 scoop with the 5, and then 1 with the 1. So I'd have 6 portions of E17, 2 portions of E21, 0 of E22. So it's literally telling me now what ceramic to layer. I would then layer it. I would put it onto a model like this. So I said this earlier, but when we're using translucent materials, we want to take the picture and replicate what's on the model to what's in the mouth. The only way to do that is to create a model that replicates the abutment color of the mouth, so I can then digitally try it in and have an accurate representation of what shine through or abutment color underneath will look like. So to the right is my digital try-in. I'll do my color reading, and then that will be my results at the end. So here it is under measurement, and here it is at final, and you can see we're having an amazing results with it now. So I'm going to fly through this, but really quick, I just like to emphasize this, because a single central, we always think the patients are crazy, but sometimes a single central could really be a full mouth, so it would stink for us to drop the ball at the end. To the left is how this patient started. To the right, you can see the process of orthodontics. This is with a Dr. Charlie Ward in Maryland, but I like showing this case because it really shows dentistry. And a lot of lab technicians need to see this, because sometimes they think they just have some crazy patient at the end saying, why can't they just be happy with their single tooth? But a technician should see this, because Charlie convinced this patient to spend all this money and to go through all of this surgery and all this orthodontics. So if I drop the ball at the end on the laboratory, it really puts egg on Charlie's face. So a single central is a very important restoration. And this tool of using eLab has really helped solidify us as a laboratory and helped gain a lot of trust from our doctors and patients. So that's eLab. And I'll let Chad now get back to Hannah, the patient we were showing before this with that little lower lateral, on how we solved her problem.
Yeah, so this was a patient of mine that came in, and she's about 13 years old. And basically, you know, we didn't want to place an implant right off the bat, one, because of the growth, because she had not stopped growing. But two, you know, implants are not the most predictable in the lower anterior unless you have really, really strict protocols on to follow. And so anyway, so Josh and I kind of brought our heads together and figured out what the best restoration was for this young girl. So anyway, so we ended up going with a lab protocol, and you see a little pontic right there. And what we ended up doing was we ended up making a bridge. Now, if we stop here at this one, I did want to say, some people may wonder what's the deal with the gray card. You know, how do you utilize the gray card? Well, Josh here has my original gray card, plus he has his gray card. And if you notice that gray card, they should be the same shade of gray in order to find the match between the model picture and my picture. And then we go to the slide on the right-hand side, and then that's what we created. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, is that a Maryland bridge? Well, she had just finished orthodontics. And so what Josh and I came up with was, well, we'll just do a cast bar with a ponic. And it turned out phenomenal. And she still has it today. So no problems at all.
I would also just show this real quick. So we're also not just using a polarized image for trying. You can also take a dual flash, like to the left, because I could also try the case in not just under polarized light, but we also look at, like I said earlier, we don't look at teeth only under polarized light. So for me, it's good to get a case under polarized light with a gray card, and also under a dual point flash with a gray card. So I could also try the case in like this to send back to Chad.
Exactly.
So Chad, we have about 20 minutes left, so we have to do this in the full mouth. So if you want to talk about Susan, I can introduce her. We spoke earlier about the minimum that I would need, and I don't think we got into the depth of those things. But with Susan, we'll show a little bit more of what we need with prep guides and wax ups and things of that nature. So
yeah. So let me talk about this real quick. So with Suzanne, she was an anterior case, and sometimes anterior cases can get a little tricky. So basically my communication with Josh was, Josh, help me with this. What do you need? Her teeth were a little bit turned, rotated, tilted, and things of that nature. And Josh says, well, let's just go ahead and start going through the case and doing it step by step. So I got him shades right off the bat. And basically, we always wax everything up, and he waxed it up, and he said, hey, use my guide, use my matrix as a prep guide. And so that's what we ended up doing. If you notice here, the preps are a little bit different sizes. Well, these preps are different sizes because they correspond to the matrix that Josh sent. If you look, you can see that I put the matrix over the preparations to make sure that he has enough room to do his work adequately.
And what's great about this, and with Chad and many of our clients, is we're a small lab, so I know when patients are in the chair. And with today's technology, I mean, Chad will shoot me this picture while the patient's in the chair and say, hey, is there anything you want? Speak now or forever hold your peace. And it's good because I can look with him and say, hey, man, can you take a little bit off the mesial of number 8? Like, it's just a constant communication, because what we really want to avoid is you going through your work as a dentist, sending it to the lab and getting that phone call. Hey, Josh is on the phone. Oh, shit. I don't want to talk to Josh. You know, we want to avoid that phone call. We want you to send the case to the lab and just get the case back. We don't want to make reduction copings. We don't want to have to re-prep. We really just want to use prep guides to figure out what we're going to do. And everything, like I said, is based off of a wax up because we planned everything.
Exactly. Like in this case, on the left, I thought I had prepped enough for veneers, but then Josh prepped a guide for me, and then I took that guide, put it on the left slide, ended up saying, oh my gosh, I don't have enough reduction. So then we moved to the right side, reduced more, and that gave him what he needed. And from that, you can get restorations like this that integrate wonderfully into the tissue.
Correct. So this is another case, but we always show this because this is a post-op of a full upper we did. And for me, this is my goal of a case, is to have the emergence look like this and margins that look like this.
Exactly. And that's a resin cement. And also another side note is that you can actually cement these with regular composite materials as well, as long as you actually heat them up, because the heating of the resin basically improves the viscosity of it, and then it also it increases the degree of conversion of the setting and the micro hardness value and the shear bond strength as well. So you've got a lot of cementation options with that. So here, from that, with Suzanne, those were her temporaries, and then this is the final at seating. And I always like to take this photo, and Josh loves to see this photo as well, is because Josh takes really, really good care to give me the anterior guidance that I need. And when I take these photos, then I know it's a slam dunk, and then this ends up being the final result.
Yeah, so again, this case, it's hard to really get everything through in this presentation, but it's all very common knowledge. As a lab owner, for instance, as a doctor, it's very hard for doctors, because a lot of doctors, it's a very lonely profession. They're in their office, or they may have an associate, which they're very lucky. So they don't really have a lot of, I guess, people to ping pong ideas off of. As a lab owner, I've seen cases we have about 70 clients, so you see all these things. So being able to shoot Chad ideas, or say, hey, I have another client who did this, or hey, I have another client that did that. It's really been a great pleasure, I think, for Chad, because we get to just go through cases and just look at it as a whole, as opposed to looking at it very linear and saying, well, this is the only way I do it, this is how I was taught, and that's it. And I think getting these natural results is really just a testament to Chad just being a very open person, and just also having trust, not just in his lab. I don't want to make this about me. I work with a lot of Chad's specialists out in Texas, his orthodontist, his surgeon, and Chad puts us all in touch, and we're all very heavily involved. And I think that's another pearl that everyone can take from this, is just be involved with all the specialists. And that's how we can have these results, because anything that would have come out, it should all come out before this picture. But the reason we have that picture to the left of nicely integrated crowns and veneers is the fact that all that communication and legwork was done up front. So there's really no way that we can fail.
So now we're going to move on to our last case, and this is a full mouth rehabilitation. This is a really good lesson in communication. Lisa came to me. She lives, I don't know, 350 miles away or so. She got referred to me, and she flew in to see me. And basically, she had already had a full mouth rehabilitation, but she was having jaw issues. And so, go ahead, Josh.
I don't think she had her 6 lowers done. I think she had everything else done, I think.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so basically she was having some jaw issues. And so that was when you start to do a full mouth rehabilitation and you have a patient that has jaw issues, you really, really want to be very, very careful and take your time with those folks. So basically your chief complaint, opening up the space in the midline, the tightness of the jaws, feels like she's always clenching, and she happened to have frequent headaches. And so talking with Josh about this, I ended up sending him these pre-op photos. And then we talked through the case with this. So on this, basically looking at this, they were a little bit opaque for her. The angles were a little bit off in certain areas. And so it just didn't look like a harmonious smile to me. And so you're right, Josh, she didn't have those lower anteriors done, but all the uppers you can see that there was some graying involved, some staining at the margins, things of that nature. And so when I looked at this, it looked like that the restorations had been ground into place, and like I said, she was having quite a few headaches. So that in my mind clued me in, okay, we have to take our time with this. So what we ended up doing was I ended up taking basically diagnostic impressions. We ended up waxing it up, and we went through our prep guides to get Josh the communication that he needed. Now, the FaceBow was basically instrumental in this because of the fact that I know some people are getting away from FaceBows, but it transfers the aesthetic and functional components. And so Josh basically knows where that smile line needs to be in relation to the horizon. So we did, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to put her into centric relation. So this was really, really interesting. So I used a leaf gauge. We loaded the joint, got the first point of contact. Then we did a bite registration. I sent Josh all the bite registrations. And then from there, we ended up putting her into CR. Josh ended up making the temporaries based on where she was in CR. So,
so what Chad just explained is very critical and crucial information that I need, because the whole aspect or the whole paradigm of a dentist and a lab working together is transferring what you have in your chair to what I'm going to have on the model, i.e., or what I'm going to have on my computer screen with CAD design. So that information is critical. It doesn't matter if it's a DFA, a FaceBow. I need, though, this information. I need to know you have centric bites. I need to know, are we restoring to centric? When I drop the pin and hit first point of contact, are we waxing to there? I just need to know all this information, because once that information is transferred to me and I have the proper information, I can then take over either by hand or with more modern approaches like this. So what we did was we took her centric bite and her face-bowed models. We put them on the computer, digitally prepared everything on the computer, and then we took over. Why doesn't this work? I don't know what's going on here, guys. What do you guys see? Do you guys see?
Yeah, we see your slides, or I see your slides. There you go.
Huh. Let me get rid of this. Hold on, give me 1 second, guys. I know you see my screen right now, but weird. All right, we're all good?
Yep.
Funny. It's the first time in a lecture. In a lecture, I just went over to change my air. I had to drop my air conditioner, and I think I hit the wrong button. I don't usually change the air in my presentations. But so everything was prepped and in-centric and CAD designed to a wax up. And here's the reason, I think I said this earlier, it takes away a lot of the legwork. So that's not a really nice design, but I think the form and the function is there. And what I do then is I mill it in wax. Then if you see, there's a little difference between the CAD design and what the wax looks like. Then we can put our finishing touches on. So then I take gray wax and I make all my finishing touches to the wax up. So it allows us to just put the focus on the artistic or the creative side. So you can see there's surface texture now, there's shape now. And the reason that this is cool is because now I can send back a dentist also a model with interchangeable pieces. So this is a very important slide for me, because this is how we take our bites. Posteriors in, anteriors out, anteriors in, posteriors out. So we can get a nice full mouth bite like that. But what I do with that wax up is, with that same file, I can mill PMMA temps. So I can send back Chad the diagnostic wax up into centric, and at the same time, PMMA eggshell temporaries like this, all in sections, that all on this model can all be interchanged. So why is that important for Chad? He can caliper my wax up, he can caliper the eggshells, he can see the thickness. So it's everything. It's the plan, it's the actual temps, it's a prep guide, and it's a fallback in case something goes wrong in the chair for Chad to always go to check any kind of diagnostic information he would need for his preparations.
Exactly, and that's all before the preparations take place. So Josh sends that to me. I do the preparations, and then Josh has those in 3 sections on each arch, and I end up putting each one, relining each one, and placing each one in. Now, my goal is to definitely look at the aesthetics, but my goal really here is, because of the fact that she was having the headaches, that she was having the jaw pain, my goal is to put her into centric relation, have her in these temporaries, and see what happens. And we had her in temporaries for 3 months to see if her headaches would go away, if her grinding, clenching would go away, and then also for a smile evaluation as well.
And I just want to interrupt real quick, and not just smile evaluation, but we're really working on occlusion. So here's the occlusion of the upper and lower in. But if you saw those last pictures, her goal was to have a very full, broad smile. And if you remember that last picture, she liked it. And Chad and I were sitting here saying, yeah, they look pretty big to us. You know, they look pretty full to us. But without rushing it, and SLAD has really championed slow dentistry, because not a lot of dentists want to get this case done. By Chad really advising her to go slow, she kind of came back around and said, you know what, they are a little big. I said, Chad then, as an aesthetic dentist, is making those aesthetic adjustments, as you see here, to really fine tune the temporary. So as a technician, I'm relying on the temporaries being adjusted in the mouth. And this is where, being a dentist, you could become a rock star and really be, you know, everyone's an aesthetic dentist. But for me, this is an aesthetic dentist. Someone going in the mouth and really sculpting the teeth and listening to the patient and working with the patient to get the teeth how they want. Because once Chad does that, he then gets me impressions of that, and then I follow them to make the final. And at 3 months, would you know, look what happens.
Exactly, and that's the one reason why we ended up putting her into CR and putting her in these temporaries, because that's the last thing, and of course you guys too, that's the last thing you want to have happen, is you do this full mouth and then they start breaking porcelain. And sure enough, this happened in the temporary phase.
Exactly. I want everyone to know this. This isn't the final. This is just still the PMMA after 3 months, that if you can see a dramatic change, Chad really did a great job shortening them, defining embrasures. But what do you know? Look, the incisal edge of number 9 chipped, I guess, going into protrusive. So Chad at 3 months could pick that up, make the required adjustments necessary. They agree that they like where they're at. They send me those provisionals and finals, and then Chad can fly to New Jersey with his patient, cement 28 units right there with all of us looking at it, and get a result like this. Now, Chad, do you want to explain this? Because this freaked me out when I saw this email.
So what happened was, so this, obviously you can tell that this is after cementation. We flew up to New Jersey. The patient was willing to fly up there. And so she was a great, great patient. We all had fun, hung out and everything. But later she comes back and she says, hey, I've got this opening. This is not what it looked like. So I sent it to Josh. And then what I ended up doing was, so she has a very, very strong protrusive. And so we tried to carry that out. And so basically what I did was I just took a mold of her mouth, ended up doing a stone model. Basically, I trimmed probably about a 0.5 millimeter off of the stone model on the 2 front teeth, made a retainer basically, and placed it on there. And so that cutback kind of pushed those back, and then adjusted her bite, and that's where we ended up now. Yeah. And these are the occlusal views of that. Yeah, so it turned out really, really nice, but it was a lot of planning. Again, and so now with the planning in the integration, I feel that this is going to last her for many, many, many years to come.
So that's the final, and Chad did a great job, because again, he didn't panic. Again, like I've had dentists call panicking. Chad didn't panic when the space was open. He just thought about it, and he troubleshooted it, and he fixed it on the spot by using occlusion and occlusal appliances to put her back in place. Everything on this case was full contour, lingual, and occlusal with just micro layering. You can see a close-up of this for the micro layering, and that is for occlusal protection because of her headaches and because of her grinding. So we gave her a nice, big, broad smile with a lot of occlusal and lingual protection. And that was her that day.
I love that last photo on the right. It really, really shows off the natural contours that you're able to give her.
And I really love this picture, because a picture like this really encompasses the vision I had for my laboratory. And after 17 years of doing this, it still makes me very proud to see pictures like this, because at the end, this is the reason that we do this. We have a lot of patients and doctors flying here. I go and fly out to see a lot of patients. And just seeing a picture like this is just amazing, because The patients have a lot of trust in you guys as dentists, and as dentists, you have a lot of trust in your laboratory partners and all of your specialists. And when you see pictures like this, it really makes all the hard work that we put into it worth it. So one of my favorite pictures of the presentation, I used to love pictures of teeth. Now I just like seeing pictures of this because this really shows the true happiness that dentistry could be, especially in a time when everyone's so down on dentistry and everyone complains about dentistry. I think Chad and I would probably agree that we just don't see it like that. We have fun doing dentistry. And I think if you're not having fun doing dentistry, you really owe it to yourself to get out of that hole and go in a direction where you can do dentistry like this.
Exactly. And the great thing is, I mean, we could spend a ton of time on these cases and we'd love to talk about these cases, but the point of the presentation is really to find that lab that you can communicate with, that you can have that friendship with, because I tell you, Josh is a master at friendship and we just click. And to find someone that you click with and that you can actually consider one of your best friends now is really a gem. And so I would encourage all of you to try to find that in your laboratory that you use now.
So I think we just made time. I don't know how we did that because Chad and I literally looked at this together 10 minutes before you all heard this, but we made time and yeah, we did a good job, Chad.
Hey, Josh, I got a question. I got one question on here. Can the eLab shade system be used with other materials such as PFM high noble crowns?
Yeah, it can. So the only issue, and so you can use it with any material really, and if you can't, if it's not compatible, remember you always have the capability, or your technician always has the capability of doing the digital try-in. So even if they don't have the portioners to get the measurements and all that exact, at least what they could be doing at the minimum is trying in their crown before they send it back to you. And actually with metal, it's actually the easiest, because if you think about this, metamerism, I said this earlier, is the #1 killer for laboratory technicians. With all the translucent materials we're using today, from zirconia and Emax and lithium and LisiPress, the issue, like I said earlier, is you see a shift. Everyone on here has probably seen the gray shift. Hey, it looked great on the bench. What the hell happened? It shifted 3 shades in the mouth. You have that with these translucent core materials. With PFM, it's still actually one of my ideal choices for a single central, because what you see on the bench is exactly what you're going to see on the mouth. There's no shift in color. So I like PFMs actually for single centrals, because with a porcelain margin, because again, what I'm measuring and what I see at the bench is what Chad's going to see in the mouth. Whereas sometimes with translucent materials, what I see on the bench, and it looks great, but then it goes to the mouth and, oh my God, why is it so gray? Or why is it brighter? So yes, it can be used with PFM, and actually I would recommend using it with PFM.
Perfect. Another quick question. Do you first have your patients get ortho treatment before having restorative work done? And I think Josh showed one of those. As a dentist, I would say that is definitely an option, and especially on those adult patients that can benefit from Invisalign, that have actually gone through ortho and had relapse. Invisalign is a great way to keep that patient in your practice, and then basically send it to your lab technician. But if there's any question, I always send my case to Josh, and Josh advises me, hey, Chad, this would be better if this tooth were to be rotated by ortho, because I think we're going to have to prep a ton in order to get, because remember, he can definitely virtually prep that on the model or by scanning, and basically tell me, hey, you're going to have to, in order for me to do my work, we're going to have to take off 5 millimeters of tooth structure. Do you want to consider ortho? So I would say it's really on a case-by-case basis, but if there's any question, get with your lab, take the model, take your photos, and converse with your lab. Wouldn't you say that that's correct, Josh?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Definitely check with your lab, and not just lab. I know this is about lab and all that, but again, I don't want to beat a dead horse. But if you have questions on ortho, consult with your orthodontist. Just consult with your specialists, and don't make it such a lonely profession. Reach out. There's a lot of people that can help you. And even if you don't want to reach out, look at things. This sounds crazy, but look at places like Instagram and Facebook, look at these things. You can learn a ton by looking at others. For instance, Instagram has been a huge resource for us to like be inspired and look at how other people are working, and it just opens up the whole world that's out there. So follow us on Instagram, Niche Dental Studio.
Perfect. Well, Josh, I tell you, it's a pleasure working with you as always. And
questions, because for some reason my mouse isn't working. Do you see the questions? I don't see
yeah,
them.
I'm seeing the questions. And that's about all we have. If I think we've got like 1 minute maybe, and if anybody has anything else, but other than that, that's about it for us. Like I said, I just strongly feel that having that communication and that friendship with your laboratory is key in making dentistry fun again.
I would echo that and say the biggest thing I hear from potential new clients I call is how like, oh, this stinks, that stinks, and it's too much complaining. It's not just Chad and I. The majority of dentists I work with, we're at a very good place. We really enjoy it, and I think what we showed tonight just really shows that if you do things methodically and if you communicate and you plan, you'll have a lot less stress and you'll just enjoy your job a lot more. Coming out of COVID, we were all very stressed, I think, about like what the state of dentistry is going to be and how it's going to go. And I've seen, and I know Chad's seen, we've seen nothing but people enjoying coming back, doing cases. I mean, we're in the lab working. I mean, dentistry is really rocking and rolling right now, and it's just back to how it was. So enjoy what you do.
Yeah. Well, kudos to GC for sponsoring us. So if you haven't tried out their products, they're fantastic.
Good people also.
Yeah. All right. I guess that wraps things up.